For a short time in 1989, the Pepsi Company owned a navy. 17 submarines, a cruiser, a frigate, and a destroyer. On paper, it was briefly one of the largest fleets in the world, and the Soviet Union had paid for its cola with warships. To understand how, you have to go back to the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union were rivals in almost everything. American products were essentially banned from Soviet shelves, and Soviet money, the ruble, could not be exchanged on world markets. So trading with the Soviet Union was extremely difficult. In 1959, the two superpowers held rival exhibitions to show off their way of life. At a fair in Moscow, the American vice president and the Soviet leader argued in a model kitchen. It became famous as the kitchen debate. During the tour, they stopped at a Pepsi stand. A young Pepsi executive handed the Soviet leader a cup of cola. The Soviet leader drank it, and the cameras loved it. For Pepsi, it was priceless advertising. Pepsi wanted more than a photo. It wanted to sell cola to the whole Soviet Union. But the Soviets had no usable money to pay with. So in 1972, Pepsi's boss, Donald Kendall, made a creative deal. Pepsi would get exclusive rights to sell cola across the Soviet Union. In return, Pepsi would be paid not in cash, but in vodka. Soviet vodka would be shipped west and sold in America. Cola flowed east, vodka flowed west. Pepsi became the first American product made and sold inside the Soviet Union. It was a huge success. Soviets lined up for cola they could not get anywhere else. Pepsi built bottling plants across the country. By the 1980s, they were selling hundreds of millions of servings a year. The deal kept growing, and it needed to be renewed and expanded. But there was a problem. The bigger the deal got, the more vodka Pepsi needed to be paid in. And there was only so much vodka the American market could drink. By the late 1980s, the Soviet Union was in deep economic trouble. Under Mikhail Gorbachev, it was desperate for Western trade. But it still had very little the West actually wanted to buy. What it did have, in enormous quantity, was military hardware, much of it old, obsolete, and sitting idle in naval yards. So in 1989, the two sides struck a very strange new deal. The Soviet Union would pay Pepsi in warships, 17 submarines plus a cruiser, a frigate, and a destroyer. In exchange for cola, Pepsi received a fleet. For a moment, by ship count, Pepsi had one of the largest navies on Earth. Pepsi's chairman joked to a top American official about it. He said, "We are disarming the Soviet Union faster than you are. A soft drink company holding a wall of Soviet submarines." It sounds like the punchline of a joke. It actually happened. But the fleet was not what it sounded like. The ships were old, rusting, and barely seaworthy. Pepsi had no intention of sailing anything. It acted as a middleman, nothing more. Almost immediately, it sold the ships to a Norwegian company for scrap. The submarines were cut up for metal. Pepsi never commanded a real navy. It commanded a paperwork navy. And the whole arrangement rested on the Soviet system staying in place. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. And with it, the strange cola for ships economy collapsed too. Pepsi's business in the region had to be rebuilt from scratch. But for one strange moment, the numbers were real. A company that sold sugar water had, on paper, out-armed a superpower's scrapyard. The Pepsi Navy, 17 submarines, 3 warships, all bought with cola.